Looks like that number's kind of leveling off. So once again, my name is Zach Zimmerman. Nice to electronically meet all of you. I use he, his pronouns, and I handle events and outreach for university housing. So as I mentioned just a second ago, for those of you trickling in, you can pop your questions in the Q&A function down there at the bottom, and one of our university housing panelists will do our best to answer the questions during the presentation, as well as we may answer them in the presentation itself. So use the Q&A, and then we will also address those questions at the end. So without further ado, we'll go ahead and get started. I'm going to pass the baton over to my coworker, Julia, who's going to tell us a little bit more about university housing.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for the introduction, Zach. My name is Julia Bluff. I'm the marketing coordinator for university housing. I use she, her pronouns. And I'm here today to tell you just a little bit about what it's like to live here, learn here, and thrive here on campus at Cal Poly. Whenever I do any presentation, I like to start with a brief overview of university housing, just so you have a little feel for it. We actually have quite a large residential population on a normal year. There are about 20,000 students that matriculate here at Cal Poly. About 8,000 of those students, when we're at normal occupancy, live here on campus. That's a mixture of first-year students, transfer students, continuing students, and grad students. So lots of different student types live here on campus. For those different types of students, we have about 20 plus residential learning communities here on campus. That's how our housing program is really arranged, and I'll talk more about those residential learning communities a little later on in the presentation. Our first year students live in 5 different styles of residence halls here on campus. That's dormitory style living. We find that first year students have a great experience in residence halls, and we love to place them there. It's a really great way to get integrated into campus life, to meet a lot of new people here on campus for your first year, and really meet all those folks that are going to carry you through the next 4 years of your campus career. In addition to our residence halls, we have 2 apartment communities, Sarah Vista and Poly Canyon Village. In our apartment communities, that's for transfers, continuing students, and every once in a while, when necessary, we do house some first years there as a backup when we have a particularly large class of first year students coming in, or if public health conditions require it. Sometimes first year students are housed in those campus apartments, but traditionally they are reserved for older, more independent students, those transfers, those continuing students. So if you lived here your second year and after, you would move up to campus apartments, and we'll talk more about them as well. So in addition to the physical buildings, we also have services and amenities for our students here on campus. So you have those right outside your door. There are 2 package centers here on campus, one for our residence hall residents, and then one for folks in our campus apartments. So you can get all of your Amazon stuff shipped over here right to campus, and get your letter mail here on campus as well. Our students normally receive their campus address around the beginning of September, so you can send things onto campus even before you move in, which is a nice feature for our out-of-state students. We also have markets and eateries that are either in our communities or just outside of our communities. So it's really easy to grab a bite to eat while you're studying in your campus community. We also have a brand new dining hall, Vista Grande, that I'm sure you'll hear a lot more about if you head over to the dining presentation that's right after this one. So you can have really easy access to eat here on campus as a resident. And then in addition to those, really, I think the driving force, what makes university housing here special is all the support, the in-person support that we offer here our students when they live on campus. In addition to professional staff, we actually have about 200 plus student staff that help our residents out in our campus communities. It's a couple of different types of student staff, including our students who work at the front desk of your community. So if you need anything, you can pop down to the front desk of your housing community to ask questions, to get a refill of toilet paper if you're in the apartment. If you have a service or maintenance needs, just pop down to the front desk. You can talk to them and they can help you get it taken care of. And then also very important, our resident advisors. Resident advisors are a really key touchstone for our new incoming students. They are students who lived on campus for at least 1 year, and they're really in a mentorship position for our new residents here on campus. So I always recommend that when you move in, you introduce yourself to your resident advisor right away. Everybody has one. And they're just great to answer your questions too. They've all lived here at Cal Poly. They can help you with that transition. If you have just basic questions about how housing works or how campus works, any resources that you need. They're also great to help you navigate some of those new relationships that you might be having here on campus in terms of roommates. So they can help you manage roommate conflicts or set up a roommate agreement. And they also host events for their residents. So they're amazing and do a lot with their residents. So say hi to your resident advisor when you move in. So with that student staff and that professional staff and all the services and amenities, what it really equates to is 24/7 support when you're here on campus as a resident. So how do you become a resident? The first step for everybody is to apply. For our first year students, the application is open now. We opened on Thursday, April 8th. And you do have to fill out an application. Our first year students are required to live on campus. All first year students do it. There's an exemption process for students that meet certain categories. That's also in the application if you're looking to apply for that one. The application appears in your portal 1 to 2 business days after you accept your offer of admittance to Cal Poly. So if you log onto your housing portal and you don't see your application, it's probably because you accepted your offer pretty recently. And it just takes 1 to 2 business days. So come back just a little bit later. In your application, you secure housing, you make your initial payment. You can edit your application or add roommates by May 7th. And you can do that as much as possible. So you don't need to go into the application and get it right the first time. We offer you access to the application to edit your preferences, to add or change your roommate groups all the way up until May 7th. And then after that, we move towards assigning students. And students are assigned to a room or a community in early August. Editing your application doesn't change your application status at all or change your priority. We just want to give students some flexibility to change their mind if they need to. The transfer student application is a little bit different. Transfer students aren't required to live on campus. We do hold a limited number of spaces for our transfer students, and it can fill, and it did fill pretty quickly. So our application for transfer students filled, I think, on Friday evening. So we've closed the application. We have an interest list that's now open for our transfer students. So if you're still really hoping to get a spot on campus apartment, add your name to the interest list. It's not guaranteed. So keep your options open for off-campus housing as well. But we do make offers to the interest list all throughout spring and summer. So hopefully a space will open up and we can offer you one, but again, not guaranteed. So keep your options open for off-campus housing. If you're on the interest list, we do have a list of resources for off-campus housing on our housing website at housing.calpoly.edu. It has a lot of off-campus apartments and property managers, and it's just a great place to get educated and get started if you're looking for off-campus support resources. All right, so in addition to a first year housing requirement, some of our students also have a second year housing requirement. Cal Poly is really committed to building a well-rounded, nurturing, supportive system that positively impacts not only academics, but also student lives. So as part of that commitment, some of our students are required to live on campus for their first 2 years. This doesn't apply to transfer students. You've already lived in a college environment and engaged in the college environment for your first 2 years. So it's for incoming transfer students from the following programs: College of Architecture and Environmental Design, College of Agriculture, Food and Environmental Sciences, College of Engineering. And then there's also a couple of programs that have a 2-year housing requirement, including the Cal Poly Scholars. That's an amazing academic program here on campus. They live here for the first 2 years. And then also student athletes, and you can connect with your coach if you have any questions about that one. So earlier I mentioned residential learning communities. We're going to talk a little bit about what those are now. At Cal Poly, students apply to live in a residential learning community. We call them RLCs, not a specific building. Residential learning communities house academic, social, identity, and interest-specific programs that help you connect and build community while you're here. We have them for first years. We also continue the RLC programs for continuing students, transfer students, and grad students. RLCs, and this is a good tip to know, RLCs can change locations from year to year. So even if it's been in a building for a couple of years, it could change. There's no guarantee it's going to stay there. So we always recommend that you request your top RLC preferences based off of your interest in the program and not in the building, because you're going to be spending a lot of time with those people, and it's really important that those folks that you surround yourself with. And it's also a really great thing to have something in common from the very beginning. So you have a basis of commonality from the start. You have something in common, an academic interest, a focus, and then we also do programming for those RLCs on the topic throughout the year. So you have an opportunity to engage in whatever college, academic interest that your RLC is a part of. So we have a couple of main different types of RLCs, and I'll have a complete list after this. We have college-based RLCs. So you can live with the folks who are in your same college, in your same major. That's really handy. If you're forming study groups, you could potentially be having roommates or floor mates who are in the same classes as you, in the same college as you. We also have program-based RLCs. So those are tied to the academic program that you'd be a part of. The big ones are TRIO, EOP, Cal Poly Scholars, and Honors. The first three, TRIO, EOP, Cal Poly Scholars, their RLC is required for their program participants. So if you are part of any of those three programs, you will live in the you'll live in the RLC that's associated with your program. That's automatic. We will pull you into that RLC. Honors also has an RLC that's associated with the program. That one is optional though. So if you're a part of Honors, you can choose to be a part of that RLC. You can choose not to be a part of that RLC. And then in addition, we also have culture and identity-based communities. So that's a great opportunity if you'd like to room with someone or house with someone who has a shared background, tradition, culture, or identity. And there's a full list of the first year RLCs that we're offering for next year. And as I said, the RLC experience does continue. If you are a continuing student, we have them in place for transfer students as well. Transfer students often really like to house with other transfer students because they're coming from that same experience and going into a similar experience when they're here on Cal Poly. There are a list of RLCs that you can request in your transfer application. We have cultural identity communities for transfer students as well, a pride community, substance-free community, and transfer or grad program as well. So if you're grad students, we can house you with other grad students as long as we have the space and applicants to do so. A quick note about roommates. This time of year, we get a lot of questions about roommates. So hopefully this helps you as you're navigating that part. Roommates are not required. Usually, and this number changes but about 50% of our applicants request roommates in their application, and the others come in as individuals. That's totally okay. If you come in as an individual, we'll just match you with another roommate in your RLC. So you still have that common basis to begin with. You still have a shared academic focus or a shared interest, a shared background in some way. At this time, first year students can request one roommate in their application. And you can request them directly via their Cal Poly email. The person you request does have to confirm that they want to be a part of your roommate group. Transfer students can request 3 roommates in their application. They live in campus apartments, so configurations are a little different, and they can cast a bit of a wider net for their roommate group. So you can request 3 roommates if you're a transfer, for a grand total of 4 people in your roommate group. As a note, because we always get questions about this, your roommate does not need to be part of your college or academic program to be paired with you as a roommate. It's totally okay if you're coming from 2 different colleges, or if you have different programs, or one person is a part of a program and another person is not. You can still request that person in your application. We know that roommate groups are incredibly important to our incoming residents. It's really nice to know somebody, and a lot of you have been having conversations outside of these presentations about what your living style is like. So we do our best to keep our roommate groups together, and we don't require you to be a part of the same college or the same program in order to request each other. We usually also get a lot of questions about how roommates find each other. We don't have a roommate matching survey in our application because we found that most roommates are already finding each other from the moment they are accepted to Cal Poly, and sometimes even before that. On social media, you don't have to look very hard in order to find groups of students based off of their classes. So Facebook is always going to have a class. Instagram usually has a class group. And on those groups, people are talking about what they're looking for in roommates. They do a little intro about themselves, and students very often link up there in terms of roommates and finding each other. So that's what we recommend if you are in the market for a roommate. Okay. So now we're going to talk a little bit about what first year amenities are like here in Cal Poly. What's it like to live here as a first year? As I mentioned, you do not request buildings. You do not request specific residence halls. Instead, you'll request residential learning communities, and keep in mind that they could be placed in any of these buildings and any of these dormitory styles. But we'll talk about all the different styles. There's some base level amenities that are available across the board. So no matter where you're placed, your experience is pretty similar. So here's some things that all of them share. Our first year residence halls have a mixture of doubles, triples, and quad rooms. It just depends on what space you're placed in. All of our residence halls are fully furnished, so you don't need to bring additional furniture with you. It is already there for you to have. All of our first year residence halls have studies and recreation spaces that are tied to the residence hall. So you can access spaces, study spaces, right in your community when you need them. There's also a cleaning service for our first year communities. So they clean, the common kitchen, they clean our study spaces. They do not go into your room though. So you're responsible for keeping your room clean, and it really does help roommate relationships if you do. In addition to the cleaning services, all of our campus residents have a television streaming service called Spectrum U. It's like Netflix, but it's just for our students here. It's included and it's automatic. So look for that. There are community kitchens that all of our residents can access as part of their residence halls as well. So even though you have a dining plan as a first year, you can still make those cookies, that pasta, that meal from home that you're really missing in our community kitchens. There's also a mini fridge in every single room here on campus, and then laundry facilities are included. So you don't need to bring a roll of quarters in order to do your laundry. Just bring your laundry supplies, and you can access the laundry that's in your residence hall or in the building over. So I mentioned there's a couple of different styles of residence halls. Again, you could be placed in any of these residence halls, communities, but with just a little glimpse about each of them. They're a little bit different, and I think they all have something that makes them unique and special. So I'll tell you what I find special about these residential learning communities before you get here. There's also a photo that you can see on this side here about what it's like inside the room. So North Mountain Halls, one of our smaller residence hall styles. There are 5 two-story buildings. They look a little bit like beach motels. So they have that kind of balcony right in front of the room on the second level. What I really like about North Mountain Halls, it's an outdoor setting. Most of the rooms open up to an expansive lawn. It's a great place to study, to soak up the San Luis Obispo sun, to play sports and games as long as public health conditions allow it. And on really sunny days, you'll see a lot of students on North Mountain Halls just enjoying San Luis Obispo. North Mountain Halls is also semi-suite style housing. So it's arranged in a kind of pod. There are 4 rooms that connect with a bathroom in the center. There's also South Mountain Halls. Our students call them the red brick buildings, and you can probably tell why from that photo. They are red brick buildings. There are 5 3-story buildings. They are all identical across the board in South Mountain. And they're really traditional dormitory style residence halls. Each building has a game room, a lounge, and study rooms. There are actually 2 study rooms in South Mountain, like a larger study room and then a dedicated quiet study room all the time that you can access. One of the nice things about South Mountain Halls is the building is really all-inclusive in that everything you need is right there. And the building residents tend to get to know each other because they spend a lot of time in that building. And the building just kind of facilitates all of the floors getting to know each other. Another nice thing about South Mountain is that it's really near the core of campus. So if you're the kind of student that you think that you're gonna want to roll out of bed and right into class, South Mountain Halls is definitely a good one for that one. We also have Yaqui Tutu. Yaqui Tutu is off Grant Avenue near the eastern edge of campus. There are 7 residence halls. They're a little bit different. Those buildings, they range from 3 stories to 5 stories. The smallest one is Nipumu. One of the largest ones, for example, is Tilhini. And they all have some similarities. So they have a community center in Yakitutu as the community. There's study spaces and living rooms in every single building as well. And in case you're wondering, Yakitutu means our community in the Yaktichu-Tichu Yaktilhini Northern Chumash language. All of the buildings themselves are named after villages from the Yaktichu-Tichu Yaktilhini tribe on the Central Coast. And if you're interested in learning more about Yakitutu and the community and about some of the stories that are connected to the buildings, head over to our website, housing.calpoly.edu, and you can learn more about Yakitutu as well. And then finally, we have Sierra Madre and Yosemite. They're technically two different residence hall styles, but they're very, very similar. I call them sister communities. Inside the rooms, they look very, very similar as well. So you can kind of see an example. That one is Sierra Madre, but Yosemite looks very similar. Sierra Madre and Yosemite, we call them the towers sometimes because each one of them has a community center in the center, and then they're surrounded by residential towers. And one of the things that I like about Sierra Madre and Yosemite is that the floors are pretty small. And then they kind of arranged around a lounge for the students on that floor in the center. So you kind of step out of your door and you're right in the student lounge that you share with your floor. So it's an opportunity to develop a really close-knit community with the folks on your floor. So questions about occupancy. What room types are we offering next year? And I'm sure you've heard this in many different presentations in other spaces, but Cal Poly is very optimistic that we are going to return to in-person classes for the fall. We do anticipate offering doubles, triples in larger residence halls. However, what room types we offer will very much be determined by public health conditions as we get near to fall 2021. So watch out for updates from that one. Admitted students should watch for any updates from housing as to occupancy level, community options, and the availability of common spaces and amenities, because it's going to be very much tied to public health conditions. So a quick word about transfer housing as well. And keep in mind, so transfer housing is our campus apartments. If you're part of a 2-year housing program, you're also going to live in campus apartments. So it's good to know this for next year. We have 2 different apartment communities, Cerro Vista and Poly Canyon Village apartments. They're very, very similar on the inside. The photo that you see here is from a living room in Cerro Vista. This building is called Bishop. It also has an amazing view of Bishop Peak. I think that room, that particular apartment has one of the best views on campus, I would say. I used to take tours up there and it was a long walk, but it was always worth it. In our apartments, we have private and shared room options, but the vast majority of the spaces in our apartments are private rooms. Most of our apartments are 4-room, 4-person apartments where all of the residents have a private room in that apartment. There are also some 5-person apartments in Poly Canyon Village, and then some 6-person apartments in Poly Canyon Village, and that's where the shared room options are. So our 6-person apartments have 2 private rooms and then 2 shared rooms. All of our apartments are a more independent style of living. So it's a traditional apartment style living. They have a full kitchen, a living room, and 2 bathrooms. Again, our spaces are fully furnished, so you don't need to bring additional furniture. We also have a cleaning service as long as public health conditions allow for us to enter the apartments. Our custodial crew cleans common spaces, specifically the kitchen and the bathroom. They don't go into your private rooms. You're responsible for keeping those clean. And then they try not to move anything around. So if you are in an apartment, it really helps us out if you clear the spaces so we can clean them. And then transfers, laundry facilities are also included, so you don't have to worry about that. Just bring your own laundry supplies. There's a community center for both Cerro Vista and Poly Canyon Village. And then Poly Canyon Village has a rec center and a pool. And as long as public health conditions allow for it, all apartment residents have access to that pool. All right, so those are the move-in, that's kind of the amenities, and now we're gonna talk about move-in, because that's really the start of your life here on campus. We look forward to welcoming all of you for Mustang Move-in. It's a fantastic big event. It's a lot of fun to move all folks in. We have set dates for Mustang Move-in for new students. So new students, we're expecting them to move in on Tuesday and Wednesday, September 14th and 15th. Just so you know, well, there's a lot of folks moving in on campus for those days. All of the first year class, all of the transfers move in on those 2 days. So in order to keep the traffic running smoothly, to make sure there are no jam ups, students book a Mustang Move-in appointment for one of those 2 days. We typically send out an invite to do that around August. So you'll select a date and time to move on campus so we can keep traffic flowing smoothly throughout the days and make sure you have the services and help that you need to move in on campus, and you can start your life on campus as well. Our first year students go right to orientation after they move in, and then they are fully immersed in our campus communities. And speaking of immersing yourself in our campus communities, one of the things I always recommend for new students here on campus is try to get out and about on campus when you move in. It really helps you find your passion and your people, is getting involved here on campus, and makes you feel connected to Cal Poly as a resident. And there are so many ways to get involved when you're here on Cal Poly, both in housing, and out of housing campus-wide. In housing, we host a lot of virtual or in-person events that are tied to your residential learning community, and your RA is also hosting events for their residents on their floor or in their building, however it's set up for them. So there are lots of ways where you can connect with folks in your college, for example, or folks on your floor, and start making those friends even after orientation ends. We also have 3 amazing faculty in residence that live in our campus communities as well. And their job is to bridge residential life and academic life. And they host a lot of events to do that. They host office hours in our campus communities as well. So you can really have a chance to kind of connect with faculty in your housing environment as well, and do fun things that are associated with their college. Outside of housing, you can always find things that are going on around campus. Right now we have an events app called What's Up Now, and every single day it lists a whole bunch of stuff that's happening on campus, even now, but next year as well. So you can find things to do that are connected to things that you're interested in. And I'm sure other folks have mentioned it, but there's so many clubs on campus as well that host events as well. If you think that you would want to be in a leadership or mentor position, when you get here, you can also look out for our application to become a resident advisor next year. It's a great way to help folks who are in the position that you're in now, moving in, and be a mentor to folks who are transitioning to life at Cal Poly once you're seasoned at it. So keep an eye out for a resident advisor application after you move in, if you think that might be a good fit for you. And then final plug is for Interhousing Council. It's also a really, really great way to get involved in your residential communities. Interhousing Council is student government within housing. They do a lot of stuff focused on students, from events to advocacy. And I think that's a really important role for Interhousing Council, is they talk to students, they have their fingers on the pulse of the community, they advocate for residents' need, they connect with housing leadership, and help make change in housing for things that residents request. So if you are interested in leadership positions, consider getting involved in Interhousing Council, or if you just want to take an active role in your community, Interhousing Council is a great space for you to do that once you get here. Normally during open house, we're running tours all the time. Unfortunately, we can't do that because of pandemic conditions, but there's still some ways that you can see inside your residential communities online, virtually. Each resident hall and apartment has its own page on our website with a gallery of photos, so you can get a sense and a feel for our buildings. There's also short walking tours that are available on Instagram, on our featured stories, and our Instagram handle, so you can find us, is @CP_housing. Another great resource for you as new incoming student is our new student housing information brochure. Typically we would hand this out at open house. We made it available virtually. So you can still have your hands on it. It just tells you what to expect next. So it's got a timeline for things to keep an eye out for, all the way up to move-in. And if you take your phone and scan it, that little QR code in the bottom corner, you'll get a digital copy that you can access on your phone or send to your computer. And it has first year information. It also has transfer information that's specific to you and just gives you a bit of an overview of our campus communities. So good resource there as well. And finally, if you still have questions after this presentation, we always get a lot of housing questions. And if we don't have an opportunity to answer them in this presentation, feel free to reach out to us. We are pretty available on campus. You can contact us in our office via phone. We have normal business hours, Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. There are students you can talk to if you want to talk to them about their student experience. You can also connect with staff as well. And you can email us at housing@calpoly.edu as well if you have any specific questions that aren't covered in this presentation or in our Q&A. And then also, add us on Instagram as well, CP_housing. And from there, I think we're just going to open it up to Q&A. So Zach, back to you.
Yes, thank you, Julia. Q&A has been very active the whole time here, and maybe I'll try and grab a few of the questions that have been most common, and then I can turn them out to our group here. We have representatives from Residential Student Experience. We have folks from IHC that you mentioned, our Inter-Housing Council, and we have our team from Outreach and Communications here that Julia and I both belong to do our best to answer your questions. So a lot of questions about roommate requests. So one that came in a couple times that I see here is something to the effect of, I'm thinking about applying by myself. Is there a way that I can state my preferences? Like, I like to get up early. I like to stay up late. I like to study. I don't like to study, that sort of thing. And how can I make that known in my housing application?
You can't make that known in your housing application. If you have like specific things that you're looking for, I just recommend going onto your class pages and putting those there and finding a roommate that you think best aligns with your living style, your learning style, whatever it is you're looking for, so you have clear expectations. And then once you find that person, you can request them in your application. Again, the application is open for adding and editing roommate groups until May 7th.
And then what if I'm a first-year student coming in off the wait list and I get accepted after May 7th? Can I still make some preferences known when I'm applying for housing?
You can. We know that there are folks who are still waiting for offers from Cal Poly, and sometimes those happen after May 7th when our application closes for editing. But we don't want you to be without options. So you can still list preferences in your application. If you have roommates that you know you want to match up with, you can email us at housing@calpoly.edu after the application closes. We do our best to match people with their top preferences. The earlier you get it in, the little easier it is for us to do that. We move towards assigning, especially in late summer, and assignments are released in August. So it can be a little harder to match you with your top preferences if you're getting close to July, but we do our best to put you in spaces that match your preferences. And roommates always remain a priority for us. So even though we can't guarantee it 100% of the time, we always take extra special care in trying to keep roommate groups together.
Absolutely. And then I'm looking at some other questions about RLCs, and I know we talked about this in the presentation. Folks are wondering, can I choose a building or can I choose an RLC? That's a very common question that we do things a little bit differently here. And then kind of a follow-up to that is, are RLCs, do they take up a whole building? Do they only take up a floor? Would I only, maybe if I'm in a very small RLC, just have a couple neighbors that are in my same RLC? How do those layouts work?
Yeah. And that's one of the reasons it changes the RLCs every single year. So you can't request a specific building. You can't request a specific residence halls. Instead, you request that RLC, that residential learning community. We wait for all of the applications to come in. And that gives us a sense of demand, like how big should this residential learning be? Some of the larger RLCs can be full buildings or multiple buildings. Some of the smaller ones could be floors or partial floors. It just depends on how much interest there is in that RLC and then how the space works out as well. We never want to have a huge RLC. You still want to have a sense of community. So there are sometimes limits on how big RLCs can be, but it can change. Sometimes we have a lot of interest one year for a particular RLC. Sometimes that interest wanes and ebbs over different years. So it just completely depends on the interests of the incoming first year class.
I will make one small housekeeping note. I've seen some folks raising their hands, and we're actually unfortunately not going to take questions live, but we'd love to get to them in the chat. We're going to do our best to stick around here in the Q&A rather, not in the chat, and answer as many of these questions as we can. I'm going to go ahead and look through here and see what other themes I can grab out as far as common questions, because we've got quite a few here in the Q&A. Another good one that came up a few times was talking about how we access our buildings. Are there keys? Do those keys need codes? Things like that. What does that look like as far as security and safety access, that sort of thing?
Yeah, it's a great question. So it kind of depends on what residence hall you're living in. The majority of our residence halls have a combination of access card and physical key access. So the residents of the building are given an access card that gets them into their building and then any community center that might be associated with their building. And yeah, that gets you into your building. Only building members have access to their building via that key card. And then your particular room has a brass key for your room that is your key for your space. Yakichuchu is a little bit different. They get one access card. That access card gets them into their specific building and their specific room. Up in the apartments, there's a combination of keys as well. So you'll get an access card that gets you into your community center and your apartment. Your access card has a code associated with it that goes to the front door of your apartment. And then you receive a brass key for your own door in your apartment. And how you treat that is up to you. You can choose to leave your door unlocked, or you can choose to leave it locked, as however like you're comfortable with.
Sounds good. We had another question about RLCs. Can I request an RLC of a different college that's not the one that my major is in?
You bet. Absolutely. If you're in College of Engineering and you have a preferred roommate who is in the College of Architecture, feel free to request their RLC and live with the College of Architecture instead of with the College of Engineering if that's your preference. It's really up to you and your roommate. We do suggest, and it's not suggest, we do require that you and your roommate have matching RLC preferences, just so we can make sure that we put you in the communities that both of you two want. So once you match up with a roommate, go back into your application, talk about your RLC preferences, and then make sure your first choice and your second choice match if you're a first year, so we know where you want to live. Also, we usually get questions from folks in Cal Poly Scholars, EOP, TRIO, honors. Those are program-based RLCs, and they always ask if they can request somebody who's not in their program. You absolutely can. We know that roommates are really, really important to most of our incoming students. And if they have someone they want to live with, we always want to do our best to put them together. So if you're a Cal Poly Scholars and you have someone that you want to roommate who is not a Cal Poly Scholar, that is totally okay. You can still request them in your application. It's just good to know that because if you're in a program that is required to live in a specific RLC, so Cal Poly Scholars, EOP, TRIO, if you request a roommate, that roommate is going to be automatically pulled in with you into that program's community.
I see a few questions in here about the gender assignments regarding the bathrooms. How are those broken up? Are there separate gender bathrooms? Are they all one gender bathrooms? What does that look like?
It's going to be a mixture in our different types of buildings. So all of our buildings have at least one gender inclusive restroom option, but some of them have gender specific restrooms. Some of them have gender neutral restrooms as well. Yakichuchu has gender inclusive restrooms throughout. The rest of our buildings in campus housing for residence halls have gender specific restrooms, and there's usually one gender inclusive restroom option in every single building.
We're going to change gears here and throw it to either we have some representatives from RSE or IHC. As you'll see, there are tons of initials and shorthand and things we use here at Cal Poly. So kind of on the student life side is what we're going to transition to now. A couple questions about what it's like being an RA. What are the benefits? When can I apply? How long do I have to go to Cal Poly before I can become an RA? So maybe one of our other panelists could speak a little bit more about what's the residential advisor experience like here on campus.
Hi, my name is Allison Elliott. I work in residential student experience. I go by she, her pronouns. So being a RA or resident advisor, we start opening up those applications in October for the next year. You can start being a resident advisor your second year or above at Cal Poly. It's a great position where you get to meet a lot of people, help provide a great experience for the students, from offering programs and things to do, to helping students with connecting with resources and helping enforce our policies on campus. And so I see one of the questions here is, what are some of the benefits of being an RA? Besides leadership experience and an awesome time, you also get a room and board, so your meal plan and your housing is provided. You also have a lot of our RAs also work the front desk, and so when you see students at the front desk, many of them are RAs, and so they're helping to answer some of those questions as well.
Thank you, Allison. All right, and then we've got another question that came up in the chat that we've got. Sam, I'll let you introduce yourself a little bit more here. Here's our IHC president, and he wants to speak to it was a question about isolating different minorities into different RLCs and whether that might have some negative effects. So Sam, I'll go ahead and let you speak to that one, and thank you for being here today.
Absolutely, thank you for introducing me. Hi, my name is Sam Andrews. I use he, him pronouns, and I'm the current IHC president. And I just wanted to address a question in the chat that said, wouldn't breaking up minorities into their own houses promote segregation and racial cliques? And that's a really, really important question. And I wanted to clarify that no one is forced into any RLCs without their choice, unless they're for academic support or academic requirements. And most RLCs are based on interest groups. Actually, all RLCs are based on interest groups. For instance, an interest identity might be the substance-free living RLC, where you can choose to live with other individuals who prefer not to be involved with alcohol or drugs in their college experience. For identity-based RLCs like the Pride community, that is, once again, a voluntary choice to take part in that community, and it's primarily organized around support and living for people who are living out their LGBTQ plus identities. So to clarify, no one is segregated by force, and all identities and communities are based on interest of support or interest of lifestyle.
Thank you, Sam. Yeah, I appreciate you addressing that.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
We want to form the most diverse, equitable, and inclusive groups that we can up here on campus, and make sure that all identities feel welcome with us here on Cal Poly, because that's what really makes the college experience a beautiful one. So let me have a look back through here. We had quite a few questions, and I know we spoke to this in the presentation as well, Julia, going back to kind of the layouts of the rooms and things like that. Is there a place on our website that people can see what these dorms look like? I believe you mentioned that in the presentation as well, and maybe we can share a link in the chat. Just kind of wondering, can you remind us are there microwaves? Are there mini fridges? What size bed is included? Those are kind of the top three I'm seeing as far as amenity questions within the residence halls.
Yeah, and we talk about that a lot more in slow days as people are really ramping up to get here on campus. But there's a lot of resources that we have on our website and that Cal Poly hosts in general. If you're really interested in kind of getting more of a sense of what those individual buildings are like and what they come with. The first one are our resident hall and apartment pages. Every single one of them has a full gallery of photos, so you can see what actual student rooms decorated by actual students look like. And it's just a great little glimpse into our living communities. In addition to that, Cal Poly Facilities actually posts all of the blueprints and layouts of our buildings. So if you're interested in seeing, well, where is the community room in relation to bedrooms, and where is the community center, and what does a corner room look like, you have access to all of the blueprints on Cal Poly's facility pages. We also host layouts They're 3D rendered layouts of what a room looks like, a standard room in each of those communities on the particular resident hall and apartment page in little accordion menus. So if you click on layouts, you'll see a rendering of what the inside of the rooms look like. Oh, and finally, a really good resource, it's posted on our Mustang Move-in page. And we have links to them and also on our first year and apartment and transfer student pages as our list of what to bring and what to leave behind when you move in. So it tells you what you might want to bring, what other students have said has been good to bring, and what to leave behind. There are, students already have access to microwaves, so they don't need to bring those. And in fact, we don't allow them in anything with a heating element in our residence halls for a couple of reasons. They are fire safety concerns, but also too many individual microwaves and toasters in our residence halls can overload the circuitry, so we don't want that. You already have access to those things in your community, so you do not need to bring them. You already have a mini fridge, so you do not need to bring one. And you can see that list on our Mustang Move-In page and then also on our website on your individual first year and transfer pages.
The old mute button. We had a few questions regarding the occupancy levels that we're planning to offer for the fall. And I know you mentioned these a little bit earlier, but are we going to be able to offer quads? Is it only going to be doubles and triples? And then likewise, if I would prefer a double or a triple, how do I make that preference known?
That's a really good question. We're currently planning for doubles and potentially triples as well. But that said, it's going to be based on public health conditions. So if we can offer triples, we will. If we can offer, if we're good to offer quads, I'm sure we will as well. But it's really going to be dependent on public health conditions at the time, which is one of the reasons why we're limiting roommate group size at the moment to just another person, just so we can be sure that we don't have to split up larger groups in case we, if it's deemed unsafe to house, 3 people based off of pandemics, the situation together. Like it's a difficult situation to request 2 other people and then be asked to break apart that 3-person roommate group late in the game. So we want to avoid that, which is why we're limiting roommate groups to 1 other person right now for a grand total of 2 if you're a first year. In terms of like, how do you request specifically a double room? You can't request specifically a double room in the application. We make an assumption that students want the lowest occupancy room type. So you can't specifically request a double. It just kind of depends on what room type is in your RLC or available across campus. You can, though, specifically request a lower cost housing option. So if you are interested in a lower cost housing option, which is a triple, and in a normal year, a quad, you can click a button in the application and let us know that you would prefer to have the lower cost housing option first. You'll also have an opportunity, if you click that button, to tell us what's more important to you, a lower cost housing option or one of your preferred RLCs. So we know how to place you in student housing according to a space that best matches your preferences. Even if you do not click that button, though, it is good to know that you could still be placed in a triple or quad if they're offered. So just know that even if you have a roommate group of 2, you might still be placed in a triple if they're offered, and another person would be assigned in that space with you.
Thank you. And Julia, you can answer this next one, or if anybody else on our panel would like to speak to it. We have a few questions regarding what COVID might look like in the fall. What does it look like on campus right now? And then what are we anticipating it looking like in the fall as far as, can students visit one another? Can they go out and get meals, things like that right now? And what are we looking at, in the best of our non-crystal ball, having ability for the fall? What are we anticipating it's going to look like? And then we had one particular specific question. If in the roommate requests, can we request somebody who's vaccinated, or is that an option as well? So kind of what's the general COVID scene look like? And then can we state a preference in the application regarding vaccination status?
Mm-hmm. So right now on campus, we've actually been in a really unique position. We have about about half occupancy in our spaces right now. About 4,500 students live on campus. That's a mix of different student types, from first year to graduate students. And we have COVID regulations in place to keep our students safe and healthy. They've shifted a little bit over the year as public health conditions have also shifted with us. But testing is a major component of how we keep our residents safe and healthy. Currently, our campus residents are tested every 3 days on campus. And it's a part of their normal process. Students who have in-person classes are also tested every 3 days. And students who work on campus also have those same testing requirements, because it's really important that students are tested regularly and often because of the settings that we're in on campus. If a student does test positive, there is a protocol in place, including quarantine or isolation housing. We work very, very closely with SLO County Public Health and Campus Health and Wellbeing to make sure those students are supported in their time under quarantine or isolation, and that they're continuing to test regularly, and they have everything they need to continue to be successful while they're in quarantine and isolation housing. So yeah, it's been a major part of our housing program this year. In terms of visiting this year, this academic year, students do have some visiting limitations. Only students within their building can be in their building to limit exposure. We also paused a lot of our custodial services that usually go into our campus apartments, again, to limit exposure. So yeah, but that's this year. Cal Poly is really optimistic that we're going to return to normal or near normal conditions next year. And we're planning on that. Although again, I think Zach calling it a COVID crystal ball is the best way to describe it. We do make plans for multiple different scenarios. So we're prepared to shift to pretty much anything, but it's really based off of public health conditions at the time. So certainly we'll know more as fall gets a little bit nearer, and we'll adjust. In terms of vaccines, we do highly, highly recommend that you get a vaccine for COVID-19 before you get on campus, but we don't require it. And you can't specifically request a student who is vaccinated in our application.
Great. We had another question about housing and fees. So a couple of different things there with, is it cheaper to live in a double or a triple? We kind of spoke to this a little bit earlier, but maybe some folks didn't catch it. And then also, is there a place online that I can see what the different assignments might cost, what the different residence halls, one compared to another, might look like for next year?
Yeah, those are all posted online already. So if you go to the first year housing page on the right-hand side in the menu, once you click into the first year housing page, you'll see a link to see fees for your specific student type. There are different fees associated with first years and with transfers, so make sure you're on the right page. That page breaks down all of the costs associated with different types of residence halls and apartments. There is always a lower cost housing option, no matter what, and it's very important that we continue to make that available to students. So if you click that button in your application and let us know that you're interested in the lower cost housing option, we're going to do our best to place you in a space that matches your particular need. So yes, you can see all of the prices. If you're a first year, keep in mind, just because we've listed all of the range of prices, I think we even included private rooms in case we have to offer them for next year. But keep in mind that private rooms in apartments are only really offered they're not offered every single year. It's just based off of either public health conditions or if we have a particularly large first year class. So you'll be most interested in the residence hall prices.
Well, thank you so much, Julia, for answering all these questions, and thank you to all our panelists for being here today. We'll do our best to go through the Q&A here in our last few minutes and wrap up any outstanding questions that you may have. Again, hopefully you've noticed our contact information posted here. You can shoot us an email, you can give us a call. We answer generally 8 to 5 during the week. That's a great way to speak with either student staff or professional staff if you've got any specific questions. And our website has a ton of information. Again, that's housing.calpoly.edu. And Julie, we had a few requests for reposting that QR code for the open house brochure. I put it in the chat so people can link to it that way. But if you don't mind going back a couple slides, we will put it there, and then I'm going to hand it over to our open house team. They want to let you know about what else is coming up. We've got a dining session, I know, starting at 1 o'clock here in just a couple of minutes. So in the interest of time, thank you all for joining us, and we'll hand it over to the open house team.
Hello, everyone. My name is Christina Silva. I'm one of the Open House 2021 co-chairs, and I just wanted to talk a little bit more about what is to come. So coming up later today, we have the Mustang Night of Talent, and that's from 5 to 7:30 p.m. And here you'll be able to hear from all our amazing clubs, not all of them, a couple of them, and they will be performing tonight from 5 to 7:30. We also have a dining session right after this that you should go to if you want to learn more about dining. And then tomorrow through the 14th, we start our club fair. And then after that, 5 p.m. tomorrow, we have our Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion in Action. And please remember to download our app, Cal Poly Now, and also go to our website for more information. Thank you all so much for coming to Open House 2021.
Hi there, my name is Rafael. I'm a fourth-year journalism transfer student with a minor in Spanish, and my pronouns are he, him, his. Thank you for watching the video. Please share any questions or comments you have down below in the comment section, and go ahead and click here to subscribe, and to watch more videos, click here. If you want to sign up for a virtual visit or talk to any student or staff members, check out our website. Link in the description. Thank you for watching. Hi there, my name is Rafael. I'm a fourth-year journalism transfer student with a minor in Spanish, and my pronouns are he, him, his. Thank you for watching the video. Please share any questions or comments you have down below in the comment section, and go ahead and click here to subscribe, and to watch more videos, click here. If you want to sign up for a virtual visit or talk to any student or staff members, check out our website. Link in the description. Thank you for watching.